And welcome back. For our first conversation this morning, we have been joined in studio by the Minister of Public Utilities, Logistics and E-Governance, my good friend Michel Chebat.
Good morning. How are you all doing?
I'm good, my brother.
Excellent.
He has been joined on set as well by Energy Officer Dion Kelly. Good morning, my brother.
Good morning.
And of course, I gotta extend Happy Energy Month greetings to you guys.
Thank you very much.
We kick off the month of November with commemorating Energy Month.
Yes.
Before we get into the meat of our conversation this morning, I want to find out from you guys if there are any activities scheduled by your ministry in honor of or in observation of Energy Month.
Right. Well, we have several activities to observe this month. First of all, we are doing it in conjunction with CARICOM Energy Month and under the theme Accelerating Innovation, Driving Electrification. And so part of what we're trying to do this month is to highlight the energy sector, create more public awareness, and this month we're doing a competition, digital competition that has 3 different categories, right, Dion? Yes. And they're all going to have prizes, of course. And also the big event for this month is the Energy Fair, which is going to be held on the 16th of this month. We're going to be having it at the Roaring River Golf Club. And so we're inviting everybody to come out and to join us. We're going to have a cross-section of people who are involved with this sector, from academia to the private sector. And we feel it is a good way to highlight this sector, to bring the importance, because, you know, when people think about energy, they think just about electricity.
Very
but
true.
it is so much more.
Yeah.
And but if you just look at electricity itself, it's one of the main drivers of our economy.
Yeah.
And so it's a very important sector. And so we're trying our best this month to try to highlight it and to sensitize the public about the importance of energy.
And I love that we're also including young persons in this month as well. Yes. Minister, I want to ask you, why is it important for us to educate everyone on the importance of energy? Because as you mentioned, oftentimes we only associate electricity with energy. Yeah. This, of course, is a part of your portfolio. So why is it important for us to understand the importance of energy?
Right. Because yes, it's an important question, and I think we need to understand the effect it has on the entire climate and on the environment, and we need to understand what the different sources of energy are and how it impacts us on a wider scale, especially in terms of climate and climate change. And one of the things we've been trying to do at the Energy Unit and at the Ministry is to try to see how we can diversify the different sources of energy we have in the country. And so right now we're looking at solar, we're looking at hydro, we're looking at, very interestingly, how to convert garbage and how to convert waste, municipal waste and agriculture waste, to energy. And so I think it is important for young people to understand not only what the different sources are, but how they impact the environment, and also in terms of energy efficiency, what role they can play in conserving energy. And so I think that is important.
When I think of energy today, I think of the entire picture of sustainable development.
Yeah, sure.
Because it certainly plays a significant role in that regard.
Absolutely.
You've mentioned renewable energy sources. If we're looking at, for instance, wind, sun, water. My question is, where are we in respect of those alternative sources of energy?
Right.
Because those have to fit within the context, the AC is getting to those have to fit within the context of sustainable development, right? We're moving away from, well, globally, we're trying our best to move away from the use of fossil fuels to more, cleaner and greener sources. Right. So where are we with that in terms of the overall picture?
Right. So I think we've made some significant steps towards that. I think one of the most critical things we've done is we've now completed, and at the Energy Fair we're going to be launching our national energy policy, which really sets the parameters, it sets the goals and the objectives of where we want to go in this sector. And when you get a chance to read it and to look at it, you're going to see that it is pushing towards that renewable energy source. as you know, Isani, we have signed on with the Saudis for a 60 megawatt solar plant. And we've also signed on for a battery storage facility. And the idea behind this is for us to start to diversifying, and as you said, to start focusing more on use of renewable sources of energy, which the solar energy would be. Clearly, the battery storage is really to provide to the grid, so that it is
to provide that level of
there's the technical person.
So to provide that level of stability to the grid, because really and truly these variable renewable systems, they would come and go depending if the sun is out, if the wind is blowing, but the battery storage will support you during the day. It can help you with peak shaving. It can also support you within the night time as well. So the utility can actually have that level of added benefit of knowing that they can switch to battery or whichever system they have. But to add to the sustainability of it, I want to go back to the actual theme for the Energy Month. As our minister rightfully said, that it's a regional push. And I think they were very creative when they came up with this theme. So when you think about driving innovation, the first word, there's a pun there. When we think about sustainability, we already have certain systems in place. But it's really, innovation is not just a technology, it's how you go about using it. And that's where the energy fair and energy month is very important, because as an energy officer, I think one of the most noble acts is to come out and give awareness to the public. Because there are some people who really don't understand how they can really impact their life in terms of how they go about using energy. And that's what Energy Month is all about.
And that's a really interesting point that you're mentioning, because I know that this year we were having conversations about the use of energy, especially when it comes to electricity, because of obviously hotter days we were having, and how obviously it's coming back to haunt us, where what we do has affected the climate, and now we're using more energy, which obviously still impacts the same way. So it's a complete cycle, and this is why it's important for us to have this conversation. I want to talk about something that was brought up in the news, where we were speaking about the possibility of using sargassum as renewable energy. Is there any development on that so far?
Yes. Actually, there is. There is a company who's now involved in actually harvesting the sargassum, and we are expecting that they're going to be setting up pretty soon to start to generate energy from the sargassum.
Wonderful. So we are, I love that we're looking at options to source renewable energy. Of course, there's solar panels. We recently saw many villages experience lighting up their community with solar panels.
If I could stick up in there, because that's exactly where I was going to go. So the electrification of Indian Creek has been a signal project under your ministry this year, notwithstanding all the situations with respect of the FPIC and all of that. Let's set that aside and simply look at the idea of bringing electricity to a community that hasn't had that very basic utility before. Talk to us about that.
Absolutely. You know, that is a very a project we're very proud of. For the first time, the people in Indian Creek, Medina Bank, and Golden Stream now have electricity. We were able to put in a microgrid there with the assistance of the United Arab Emirates. And it is amazing to see how people's lives are transformed when they have electricity. I mean, from education to business to exploring the World Wide Web. I can tell you that the telephone companies are now going down there. So when you get electricity, it opens up these communities to everything else. You know, so now they have electricity, they're going to have access to internet, and to, so for me, that's incredible. You know, I think when you open those doors for communities, you open up the whole world to them, you give them new opportunities that they did not have before. And so that is critical. And I can tell you that we have about 21 other villages in Belize that still need to be electrified. And we're working on 5 of them at the moment. And we're hoping that soon we might be able to get the other 16 electrified.
When you speak of electrifying these far-flung rural communities, my mind goes back to Machakilha, for instance, where there was also a solar installation there recently, And it's amazing how that opens up the community for commerce, because before that, they didn't even have a fridge to plug into.
That's right.
The most
You know,
That's right.
so they couldn't be able to sell certain things and what have you.
Yeah.
But now that they have this source of electricity, they're now able to do business. You know, you have a freezer that you could keep your chickens and you know, whatever else that you're selling, nice and cool, right?
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where, for instance, students had to study by candlelight.
Right.
Yeah.
Now they can stay up at night and don't have to worry about, you know, lighting
It's
a candle to
transformational,
read.
Isani.
Yeah.
It really is transformational, you know, and you see it in the faces of the women.
Yeah.
You know, you see it in the
Women
faces
and
of the
children.
children. I can tell you, in Indian Creek, when there was some hesitation on the side of some of the leaders of the village, the women were
Yes.
adamant that they must get the electricity. They understood immediately how important it was for them. And so it was really eye-opening for us to see where the push was coming from, you know.
Minister, where do you see the future of Belize when it comes to energy? We are looking at transformation being provided to these communities that did not have electricity, and now they are provided clean energy sources through solar panels. Is this something that you see Belize achieving in the later future, where we rely primarily on cleaner energy?
Yes, absolutely. We have an international commitment to have at least 70% of our energy sources to come from renewable sources. And that's by 2030, if I have my dates correct. And so that definitely is the push. We realize for so many reasons why we can't continue depending on fossil fuel, not only because of the cost of it and the effect it has on the climate, but also because you must realize that 51% of the electricity we generate comes from Mexico. And I think for our energy independence, it is important for us to rely on our own sources. And for the growth of our country, it is important for us to have domestic sources, renewable sources of energy.
We saw that fairly recently when we had a significant rise in temperatures where CFE was saying, well, we have to be able to provide for our own
ourselves.
first, and then we'll, you know,
See what
sell
we
you
can
the
do.
excess,
Yeah.
Right.
if there's any. And that sort of instability, if I could use that description, raises serious concerns for us here, because we are used to accessing power at the flick of a, you know, at the flick of a switch.
Exactly.
And when you're telling us that, well, this group comes first because this is your primary market and your obligation lies there primarily, and then we as Belizeans come after us, I'm like, okay, well, should I sleep with my fan on tonight or should I not? Am I getting energy or am I not, you know?
No, I'll tell you that our energy goal is a very ambitious one. Not only do we want to have this transformation to renewable sources, but we're hoping that at some point we can generate so much electricity then perhaps we can start selling into the Central American grid, for example, or even to southern Mexico, which we know have some challenges themselves. And so it's a very ambitious one, and it is certainly based on renewable sources of energy. I think we're blessed with a country that has abundant natural resources, and it is important for us to be able to harness it. I'll tell you, I particularly like the waste to energy project because it gets rid of that sore eye, and it get rid of you know, having to bury a lot of the waste that we produce. And so those projects really are very exciting projects, and I want to be able to see that over the next 2 years that we're able to get one on the ground, for sure.
Dion, I want to bring you in the conversation as energy officer to talk about some of the works that you have currently been taking on through the ministry. Okay,
sure. So if we could probably go back to energy access, and I think you raise a good point that sustainability is very important. I believe that project was birthed through the whole concept of energy justice. It's really not fair or right to actually have a country that's so rich in different natural resources and have a portion, I think it's somewhere around 5% of the country that doesn't have access to electricity. And so one of my main projects is the Energy Access Project, and I think since 2015 we started, and in 2017 we actually inaugurated the first one, and that was a real success. But I think what is very important to note is that as we go along, we're getting better at what we're doing in terms of energy access. We're becoming more efficient. We're understanding do's and don'ts within the process, because really and truly, at the end of the day, it's not the energy that we're after, it's actually what people can do with it. And so ensuring that the energy that we provide is, first of all, feasible to the village so that they can actually afford to pay. We also want to incorporate as well that social aspect, whereby we won't just provide the service to them, we also want to partner with different ministries to see how we can get in and support these villages in terms of how they can actually create businesses for themselves. Because really and truly, we live in a global village in terms of a country, and what they do within their village affects the rest of the country. And if they can play a bigger role in terms of the economy, that's really our goal. We really want to see them strive just like the rest of the country.
So here's my question, and it's one that I've been grappling with for some time, having done some work researching renewable energy and how it can benefit Belize and Belizeans. What is government doing in terms of incentivizing persons who would be interested in using renewable energy sources for their own properties? Right. I ask that because on one hand, we're saying we need to go green. We need to consider, alternative sources. But on the other hand, when I import the solar panels and the batteries, I'm paying a serious duty. There's nothing that says, okay, you know what? Thanks for moving in this direction. This is what we'll do to kind of ease that load in terms of taxes and tariffs and what have you. What is government's position on that? Is that a consideration, or is that something that would require perhaps several ministries to be able to work together to look at a regime that works?
It is a conversation we're having, Isani, because it does affect cross ministries, line ministries. It is not solely for the Ministry of Energy, but as you can imagine, we need to get the Ministry of Finance involved in it. And that is a discussion that is ongoing, because we recognize that if we want to reach a certain goal, then as you correctly say, we need to incentivize the private sector to be able to help us to reach that goal, right? But I can tell you, Isani, one of the interesting things that's coming along, because it's not only for you to be able to import these things, but you must have a license. Yeah. And so we are working on a piece of legislation along with the PUC that will open up the electricity market, and so that from your people, like you'll be able at your home to have these panels, and you'll be able to have a trade-off with the electricity company in terms of the energy you generate and the excesses that you have. And we are creating different categories so that depending on the amount of energy you generate, you're going to be needing a certain license. But what it will do is it's going to enable new players to come into the electricity market. And I think that is what we need. We need to open up this market. There's a lot of interest in it. There's a lot of local interest in it. There are lots of local businessmen who are interested in becoming a part of this sector. And I think that this legislation would be the enabling legislation for that to happen. Yeah,
that's interesting, because, I mean, I was right here thinking, for persons that are listening that have been interested in just getting maybe solar panels for their own home. Right. What is the process? As you mentioned, there's licensing involved. Do you, for a regular person that wants to provide electricity to their home with solar panels, do you need a license to do that? Could you?
Yeah. Not at the moment. Okay. Not at the moment, but that's all going to be regulated, because we realize, and to be honest, that horse has left the stable, so to speak, in that because people realize the benefit of having solar panels, they've gone ahead and they've now started to employ it without it. And so what we're doing is we're regulating it to make sure people understand clearly what the playing field is like and what their obligations are and how they can benefit. Because at the moment, you're only generating and your excess is just going nowhere, so to speak. Right? And so now we're going to be looking at a regime that's going to harness the excess and to bring it into the generation pool.
Wonderful, wonderful. I mean, I want to take things back to Energy Month and why it's important for us to have this conversation. So perhaps we could take a deeper dive into the activities that will be held and how we can see energy, the conversation of energy, come to life throughout this month for all sectors, if possible.
So when we think about Energy Month, we normally have a pillar of different activities. This year we're really having a more focused level of activities. On the 16th of November, as our minister stated, we'll be having the Energy Fair, which will be at the Rowan River Golf Club in Rowan Creek. So I think one of the highlights there is the actual launching of the energy policy. As you guys may know, that the first energy policy was created in 2012. We could say that it has had a lot of success. It actually had the birth of the Ministry of Energy, and so that was very important. We see fast forward to now 10 years later after that creation, we see that it was time for us to actually update, and it's very important that word update, because we haven't thrown out the baby, the bathwater, so to speak. We have kept all those points that were within the first policy, and we have really improved on them, specifically with renewable energy. E-mobility, which I'll reach to in a point, is a very important part of the Energy Fair. So we see that the launching, we'll have actually hard copies, we'll have digital copies as well for those who want to go through it and read it. Of course, that's the real guiding document for us of how we will roll out, because it's really from 2023 to 2040, so we're actually looking into the future. I think one of the other highlights of that day is the forums that we'll be having. We'll be having different forums whereby we believe it's very important to, at the end of the year, and I think Energy Month is strategically positioned within the calendar, that we avoid the whole Christmas rush, but just in time to say, listen, this is what we have done. When I say we, we're not talking about the ministry, we're talking about our stakeholders. And that's why we invite our stakeholders, bring your booth, bring your selling points. What do you want to show the country that you have done? And going back to sustainability, we have invited primary schools and high schools to this activity, because we understand that it's not just the adults. We need to prepare the children to understand, you know what, this is the direction my country is going in. Maybe they might not understand what is renewable energy, but they understand what is turning on my light, right? And so we want to bring them out so they can meet different stakeholders. I'm sure the different stakeholders will have their own activities. But to go back to the forums, we know that, and I think that word 50 is very important, as the minister rightly stated, about 50% of our electricity comes from Mexico, but also 50% of all energy that's consumed in Belize is for transportation. And of course that's imported. So the vulnerability of the country is right there looking at us to say, what are you doing? And that's why e-mobility is very important. What we'll be doing, we have asked different...
So, stick up in for a second.
I get very excited about Energy Month, you know.
What I want you to do is to perhaps explain to our viewers, those who may not know what e-mobility means, give them an explanation of what it is, and then we could proceed from there.
Okay, sure. So when you think about the current situation within the country, and not just the country, the whole world, we have really been using internal combustion engine vehicles to power our transportation, whether it's airplane, whether it's land, whether it's bus, whether it's your personal car, even your motorcycles, right? And so that has a bearing on the economy, because we need US dollars to import this gas in. And so when we think about e-mobility or electric mobility, we're seeing whereby as long as you have access to electricity, you can have transportation. And if you can produce, and it's a trickling effect, if you can produce your electricity within country with renewable energy resources, and you use that same renewable energy resource to produce electricity, and use that same electricity to move your transportation, you are doing a homegrown solution. And that's why e-mobility is so important, because if you can, even in your household, if you can grow your own crops, you're saving your money, you can do something else with it, but at the same time you have that level of security that you know, if I need X amount of crops to get me through the year, I'm safe. And that's, as a country, what we want to do. We want to ensure that we have our crops in terms of the electricity for our transportation, so as a country we can be competitive within the region and the world.
So let me challenge you from this point of view then. It's the same considerations that have to be made for instance, solar energy in terms of an investment upfront. Because when you speak with stakeholders and the average individual, if you approach them and say, hey, you know what, e-mobility is the way to go, fair enough, that means now I have to buy an electric vehicle. What's the cost of an electric vehicle? Considerably higher perhaps than something that exists that is ICE, the internal combustible engine. So they will say, well, you're asking me to put up $90,000 up front for something where I already go by where my budget could allow me for the right now. It's like when you're looking at the solar panel thing, right? You're telling me going solar means I'll have to invest X amount in panels and batteries, which is an upfront investment for me to save later on down the road.
Right.
But then you have to look at the economic realities of the average Belizeans.
I love that challenge because I'll tell you who's the best teacher in the world, history. History has taught us that when you depend on a certain source and don't try to think that one day that source might not be there, and when that source started to disappear, then your cost to procure that source goes up till it becomes a point that it's not feasible. We saw it in 1970 when we had the energy crisis globally. The world suffered. And that will happen again because fossil fuel is actually depleting.
It's a finite resource.
And as it depletes, the cost goes up. How will our economy continue to spend money just to get in fuel to try to be competitive whilst the cost is going up? And so you have that challenge, and you can look at it as a national aspect or a household aspect. Because you have a car, and I'm sure you see your costs fluctuating in terms of fuel. And so this is the benefit of technology, and that's why I want to go back to the whole theme of Energy Month, which is driving innovation and accelerating innovation and driving electrification. Because the concept is there. When you would invest these funds in terms of the electric vehicle, you might say it's a high cost. But if you think about it, and you would do the cash flow in terms of buying that vehicle and what it would cost you, I'm talking about electric vehicle, and what it will cost you over time to operate and maintain that vehicle, the cost is being competitive. If you recall, in the past, people used to say using a diesel engine is much cheaper than going solar because solar was so expensive. And it's the same thing that's happening to electric mobility. That the ICs might be cheaper to buy but more expensive to operate and maintain. So the concept is there, seeing that the market is shifting in a direction that if you don't shift with it, you will suffer.
You'll suffer later.
Yes, you'll suffer later.
If we're too late.
But I think your point is well taken. And I think if we look at it from a more holistic point of view, I think at the end of the day, if we want the transformation to happen, if we want our citizens to follow the path we're trying to set, then as a government, we need to create the incentives for it, or else it will not happen. And I think we realize that, and we're working on that. Like I said, it involves cross-ministries, line ministries, and that is a conversation we're having. And I'm sure that in the near future, we will be seeing something along that line. You know.
All right. Well, as we celebrate Energy Month, what would you say to our general viewers that may not be able to make it to any of the activities, but are simply listening to the conversation that we're having this morning? What is your message to our viewers?
My message would be that energy is cross-cutting. And as it cuts through your life, you need to really take stock of what you're doing with energy, how you're using it. Are you using it efficiently? Are you thinking about what tomorrow might be for your family? I always believe that we need to realize that the earth that we live in, we have borrowed from our grandchildren. Because if I'm going to give it back to somebody, I had borrowed it. And so we need to ensure that the earth that we leave for our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, is a livable earth. Because I think, even at my age, I can remember when it was very, very cool in the summer, even now. It was very, very cool.
We're just talking about that.
Right? It was very, very cool. And so we have seen that the world is shifting in terms of the climate. And it's not getting better, it's getting worse. But of course, we were the ones who created, as in people within the world, and we can be the one to stop it. But you have to start, it has to start in your household. So my message to people is, look at what you're doing. Think about your children, think about your grandchildren. It might cost a bit more for what the shift will imply, but your children will benefit, and to me that's the driving force, at least for me.
Minister, any last words?
You know, this is a very important month, and I think it is important for our community, our citizens, to understand that each of us play a role in this energy sector. Everything we do affects somebody else, and the type of energy we consume affects the earth. And I think, as Dion rightly say, we have a responsibility to make sure that we leave a better place for our grandchildren than the one we found. And in that regard, we need to be able to preserve, and we need to become more efficient in the use of electricity and energy. And my message is open up your mind. Don't be boxed into what is traditional. Look at what is coming. Look at the innovation that's coming, and look at how it can transform your lives and all of our lives.
Yes, excellent. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We appreciate the information, and we look forward to celebrating Energy Month with you this year.
And let me end by inviting you guys and inviting the general public to come out on the 16th. We have a cross section of the community involved. And come out, it's going to be fun, it's going to be educational, so come and join us.
And if we are looking for any other updates as it relates to the ministry, do you have social media pages that we can get information from?
Yes, we do. Yes. The ministry has a Facebook page, and a website.
Alrighty.
So, yes.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate the information as always. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, it's all about NCFC and Child Parliament 2023. Don't go away.